5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. And let me know if everybody can hear audio. As you can see, we have the beautiful Holli Coulman with us today. How you doing, Holli? And you guys let me know if you can hear Holli, because we're just adjusting the audio settings here. So we'll have Holli say something, make sure we can hear her. Say something again, Holli.
Excited to be here.
There we go. I think it's working now. Okay. All right, guys. So it's Wednesday. As I promised you guys, we are going to be starting a new segment called Wednesdays Ladies Night. And we're going to focus on topics and issues that women deal with as they prepare to go to federal prison. So introducing Holli Coulman, I thought would be a great idea, because not only did Holli Coulman go through the process, but she's actually spent time in the SHU. She understands what it's like at a camp. And a lot of you that are in this room, I see we got Greasy in here, Tamara, Secret Life of a Prison Wife we have in there. So if you guys have any questions for Holli, we're going to go ahead and answer questions today as well. But we're going to go ahead and kind of introduce her and hear a little bit about her story, and then we'll start talking about it. So let me kind of bring you guys up to speed a little bit. So Holli worked for Hewlett Packard, and she ended up getting a charge of wire fraud for supposedly misappropriating funds that were supposed to be used for the company or company purposes, and they're saying that she used it for personal expenses in excess of $1 million. So we're going to let Holli kind of start there and tell us how this all started, so she can bring us up to speed, and then we'll talk a little bit about prison as well. So go ahead and take it away, Holli.
Okay. So I worked as an executive assistant at Hewlett Packard for 12 years. And during that 12-year period, I was promoted through the company along with my bosses. Actually, there was one, and then there was another one. And ultimately, I was involved in the highest echelons of the company, meaning I was around with the senior VPs of finance and actually the person who ran this particular division. There were 3 different divisions at HP. With that increasing pressure, and a lot of things just became a little gray with a lot of the changes in management, I was asked to do more and more and more, meaning I had 3 different types of corporate credit cards. We were too busy moving in business, and I would be asked to do things like put people in private jets, take people to Wimbledon, take people to the Super Bowl. Little things out of the boundaries, and everything went on my credit cards because the visibility for that, they did not wanting it to go, they didn't want the charges to go on their credit cards so that the CEO of the company would know what the expenditures were for. They kept everything at my level, and that way when I would put in for my electronic expense reports, they would review and approve them. Obviously, I was asked to do some things that were questionable, personal expenses. I was becoming more of a personal assistant to the senior vice president that I was supporting. She would start asking me to do personal things on my credit card for her and her family. I saw a little bit of that, did a little bit of that of my own, but definitely not into the tune of what the FBI and the prosecution came back at. In 2012, in May, HP decided that they were going to merge divisions, and they were offering packages to employees. And given the stress and everything that was going on, I decided to take a package and leave the company. Went to work for a different tech company in Irvine. And in November of 2013, so this is a year and a half that after I left Hewlett Packard, on the morning of November 21st, my birthday, I had 13 FBI agents come in at 6:18 a.m., barreling in on the door, knocking on the door, wanting to come in. I go to open the front door. I was immediately pulled out and put up against our wall outside. My husband happened to be on the inside. He was coming down the stairs, and they kept screaming at me, wanting me to verify my name. Then once I verified who I was, they said, we're not here to arrest you, but we do have a search warrant. So they handed me a search warrant. We stepped back into my home, and after reviewing the search warrant, I was like, okay, what is this really about? You're completely, you're just traumatized because you've got 13 people coming into your home. They sequestered my husband in our family room, and they put me in our front of the house in our living room. And they immediately said that we're here to go through this and find these particular items. And what they were looking for were electronic equipment, anything that would have those credit card numbers on them or purchases is what they were looking for. Again, I didn't know whether to answer questions, not answer questions. You always hear, don't do anything, don't say anything to incriminate yourself. So I was very careful about what I answered to them. My husband was also being asked questions, and at that time, when I heard him answering, I asked the lead female FBI agent if I could use my phone, my cell phone, because I wanted to call my attorney. I had an attorney friend, and I was hoping and praying that he was going to pick up the phone, and thank goodness he was. He did. He told me not to say anything further, and he told my husband not to say anything further, and that he should be able to join me in the front of the living room. So as we sat there and watched them for the next 2.5 hours, they come in and going out, running in, going out. I finally asked the question, what are you doing and what are you taking? And they said, everything we're going to take, we're going to put right here in front of you. And there was nothing in front of me. So finally, at almost the end of the 3.5 hour total, they did a little sidebar, the lead agent and another FBI agent. And they looked at my husband's computer, and they were kind of, again, talking to themselves. They came back and they said, well, we know this is stolen. We know misappropriated funds to purchase this. The serials match what's on the search warrant. And I'm like a dummy. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, there's just no way. My husband said there's no way that could have happened. This was purchased when I was overseas. He was in the military. They said, no, it matches, and we're taking this, and we're going to take your 2 cell phones. And ultimately, that's what they took. Laptop, 2 cell phones, nothing else for my home.
That was it.
That was it. And afterwards, I called, again, my friend. He said, you need to come into the office, and obviously, I only handle state. We need to put you with a federal attorney, and we have a really good federal attorney here in the office that I want you to talk to.
So let's stop right there for a second. So they're telling you that they have a really good federal attorney for you to speak with.
Right.
When you actually went and sat with this attorney, did you have any questions prepared that you knew that you should be asking him?
No, because it happened that day, and I wasn't even I was more concerned about what is going on. Can you find out what's going on? I don't understand this. I wasn't even ready to screen or get to that point. I wanted to find the attorney, ask him questions about what's next. What do I do? So I went in, met with both my friend and the new attorney, who, by the way, that I now work for. And he sat down and said, well, I'll make some phone calls and I'll see what's going on, but right now we just have to sit back and see what happens. There's nothing there. He made a couple phone calls. This happened in November again of 2013. The holiday season was going on.
So you were not indicted at this point, correct?
No indictment whatsoever.
This was all still just pre-investigation.
Pre-investigation. February rolls around, still really nothing. They're still doing an investigation. March of 2014 is there, and all of a sudden the laptop and 2 phones show back up. FBI mailed them back, said they're fine. There's nothing on them. So again, I'm having to get up and go to work and function normal. And do I tell my employer what happened? No. It was just, I was trying to function, and it was really difficult. I was looking at everything online, what happens, what seizures, what's going to happen next, what's the possibility. I was trying to figure out, should I even contact anybody from Hewlett Packard? What, have they been investigated? Most everybody that I had worked with had taken a package and gone to other companies. So I was afraid to even pick up the phone. June comes, and I have been dealing with all of the stress of worry and having to, I was in another executive assistant job supporting a senior vice president and trying to, be functional. And when June came, we got a call then from the prosecution. I had two prosecutors. The reason why is one was going to go back into the public sector, and he was going to really be handing off his caseload to her. So there were two. And they had called my attorney, and they said, we would like for you to come in. We would like to speak to Holly and talk to her about her bosses and her boss's expenses. And I'm like, okay, it's not about me. All right. It's about everything that we did that wasn't really right.
Did you have any inkling at this point that you were potentially going to be indicted for any type of crime, whether it be wire fraud or conspiracy or anything? And did you have any insight that you actually might be looking at prison time?
No. Inside of my head, I was like, there's just no way. There's no way that can happen to me.
And why did you think that?
Because I felt that if they return a laptop to phones, they haven't found anything. Obviously, they're going through bank information. I mean, they have already had this, their investigation started before they even show up at your door. There's really nothing there. They haven't really talked to anybody that I was aware of. I knew if they were going to talk to any of my former co-workers, my actual peers, that they would pick up the phone and call me and tell me. So again, I didn't know that this was going to be coming. My attorney never prepared me at that point to say that this is a prison case.
Do you think your attorney had an idea that this possibly was going to turn into you facing prison time?
Yes, I do.
And that's an important question because I know a lot of you guys that are watching, and we've got about 20 people in the room right now hanging out with us. Oh, Larry Levine, what's going on, Larry? So we got about 20 people watching us, and I know a lot of the questions I get from a lot of clients is they always say the same thing. I've never been in trouble.
Right.
I didn't really do anything wrong. Am I going to go to prison? And I think that initial shock factor is we only think, when we think about bad people, we think of murderers, rapists, people out there slinging a lot of drugs and guns. So was there something that ran through your mind that you felt like they're going to go, well, they know I'm a good person. There's no way that they're going to send me to prison.
How can they send me? I mean, I'm just the executive assistant. I was doing what I was told to do, everything. I didn't think anything whatsoever, specifically even on the search warrant list. And it became broader than that later, and I'll explain that. So in June, when we went to sit down with the FBI and the prosecution, we were able to take my attorney went. We had co-counsel, so I had two attorneys with me, and I was smart enough to always keep some of the information that I had. I had things on thumb drives. That showed some of this, that the charges were not for me. It specifically stated who they were. So I had a 5-inch binder prepared, as well as the procedure of expense reports. 300 and some thousand employees at Hewlett Packard process their expense reports in the same way. There's no way that I can manipulate the system, that I can act like 4 different levels of approval. So, and that was one of the things that they kept saying, that it was by email. And I couldn't even do that. You can't approve things like that. So we go in, we sit down, and it became very clear right away that they weren't there to talk about my bosses. They were there to talk about me. They felt that actually that I had misappropriated $2.3 million. Every dollar that I ever spent, whether it was for an event, and I'm talking about what my job used to be. We did Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, lots of money. So they've said $2.3 million. And again, that was every single dime that I ever spent. And what they try and do, again, is they throw everything up on the wall and see what's going to stick.
So just let me clarify, because just to make sure everybody's following along. So basically, they're saying you spent $2.3 million in inappropriate funds, but what they did was they took every dime that you spent on this corporate card.
Yeah.
Clearly, even if you were spending a portion of that for yourself, there was plenty of stuff that you did for the actual company. But in order for them to raise the situation and guidelines, the amount of time you could be looking at, the amount of fear they want to put into your life, they hit you with the entire amount, probably already knowing they're not going to stick you with $2.3 million. But the guidelines and the amount of time that you may be looking at on $2.3 million is enough to scare the you-know-what out of you. So do you feel that they use this as a scare tactic, knowing that you didn't spend $2.3 million in self-appropriated funds?
Correct. You nailed it right there. And at the time, again, didn't know that. I'm going, how can the world... That's exactly what they're trying to do because of the guidelines, the sentencing guidelines. They wanted a bigger sentence. So they wanted to see what we would respond with, and we knew right away they were going with, again, 2.3. During that meeting, when I pushed the 5-inch binder across the table, and they looked at it, and they pushed it back, it all of a sudden went down to $954,000. Miraculously, I don't know how that number really came. They did take a little break, and that's what they came back with. So it went from 2.3 down to 954. At that point, our meeting was over. My attorney basically said, no, okay, that's enough. We're done.
And this is still all prior to indictment?
This is all prior. I'm going to get a plea deal 2 weeks after this meeting.
Okay, so they offered you a pre-indictment plea without actually being indicted yet.
That is correct.
And a lot of you that are watching this right now, you're in the same situation where you're under investigation and the government's basically telling you, if you start cooperating now, we'll put a plea on the table for you now. And they bait you with this. And I'm not saying it's bait, because in the end of the day, you're probably going to end up taking a plea. But they tell you this will avoid us raiding your house. This will avoid us throwing you in handcuffs. This will avoid us throwing you in county jail. We'll allow you to come in, turn yourself in. We'll process you, give you a bond, let you release you the same day. Is this stuff that they led you with?
Exactly. Boom, 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 what you just said. So that's exactly what happened. 2 weeks later, again, I'm sitting on my in-laws' couch, and I get a call from my attorney, and he said, well, the deal came in, and they are seeking 27 to 33 months. And
what went through your mind when you heard, wait a minute, actual prison time?
What went through my mind is when he said, this is a good deal, I said, you've got to be joking. Those were my exact words. You've got to be kidding me. I couldn't even fathom it. I was just absolutely numb.
So your attorney brings you this information, and the reason why I keep stopping you, because you are totally talking about things that we focus on here on this channel a lot. What we talk about, one of the biggest issues that we see with attorneys is it's clear that the attorneys do not want to fight the government. So when the attorneys receive these pleas that they bring to you, they almost pitch it to you as like, this is a great deal. We got a really good offer on the table, knowing that if you were to deny that, that is going to put so much pressure on your attorney to do something for this amount of money that you've just paid him. And he knows he's not going to be able to battle the government unless you've got some incredible evidence to support that you did nothing wrong, which clearly you couldn't prove that you did nothing wrong. So your attorney's only objective and his only way he can proceed at this point is to pitch you on accepting this plea to lead you into prison. So what did it feel like hearing that you actually, how long did it take you to swallow that pill of, I'm going to prison?
It took me, I was just numb. It took me about another 3 months from that point. But the plea deal came in, and I only had a very short period of time and that's where I'm, Googling, again, trying to figure out what to do, take it to trial. With the conviction rate the way it is, there's no way. So 3 days later, I called and said, okay, I'm going to come in, I'll sign it. And again, you were signing your name on this thing. It says you can't appeal. And it just, that's my life. It's gone. I'm just signing this away.
But did you still, at that point, when you agreed to this plea, did you actually really think you were going to get prison time, or did you still think somehow they were going to see that I'm a good person and not sentence me to prison?
I still thought that judge would absolutely see the value that working with military families and doing everything that I had done, my past, my work ethic. There's just no way. I'm a good person. And at sentencing, when I went to do my plea, it dawned on me immediately right afterwards. Everything was out on the news. I think that's really when it started coming in to me that, wow, okay, I'm going to be going to prison now. It's time to try and minimize the 27 to 33 months. What am I going to do?
So now you've accepted your plea. How long after you took your plea did you go in to meet with U.S. Probation to do the pre-sentence report where they interview you?
Okay, I went a week and a half later, and again, my attorney said, we're just going to go down, we're going to meet with a probation officer, it's going to be a real short meeting, nothing to really stress about, just have a conversation. And I regret that as much as I regret not, beating down the amount of money. But again, he told me within the guidelines the reason why my plea deal came where it came. So we go down, I meet with the probation officer to do my pre-sentence and report, and he's asking me basic questions. And then the one question that, again, my attorney didn't catch, he said, well, should I just take the information that you provided during your meeting with the prosecution and the FBI? Should I just basically take that as your answers? And I felt, again, at that meeting, we were there for 3 hours, I thought I conveyed everything in a way, and that's not what happened. In fact, my pre-sentence report came back with a higher amount. He was saying that I should have 37 to 44 months. And he just regurgitated everything that the FBI and the prosecution did, just copied and pasted everything. My story, my life wasn't even in there.
So your guideline range was, what was it prior to that? I know you just said
27 to 33.
And he recommended
higher.
So
higher.
You were and what did he recommend? What was it?
It was, I believe, 37 to 44.
37 to 44 months. So clearly we already know you didn't get that much time. But when they recommended that, had you properly prepared at all, let's say you did get 47 months, were you prepared that would you have been able to take advantage of like the residential drug addiction program?
Didn't even know about it.
Okay, didn't even know about it. Your attorney never mentioned it to you. Now,
Nope.
Most people are like, well, she doesn't look like a drug addict or, somebody that's going crazy on substance abuses. But the one thing that we have to keep in mind is that's completely subjective. You could be drinking wine on a daily basis. You could be over drinking on the weekends. There's all kinds of relevant conduct that could constitute why somebody would be able to take advantage of this program in prison. And the fact that your attorney, you got lucky on the sentence you got because clearly you got sentenced to less time. You got sentenced to what, 21 months?
21.
But U.S. Probation was recommending double that practically.
They were. And again, if I would have been more prepared, I would have been able to answer those questions. I did know about the RDAP. I was drinking through this whole process when it first started. It was something I'd start drinking. So yes, I can see how people develop a substance abuse problem. Again, it wouldn't be surprising if I didn't have a drink a bottle of wine almost every day. So yeah, through this.
I know a lot of you are watching right now going, well, if she started her drinking after the fact, after her indictment, I'm just bringing this up because it's a good point. We know that if it's not in your PSR 12 months prior to the indictment, in most cases, that's going to disqualify you from the residential drug addiction program. Keep in mind, we just had a client that was in that same exact situation, a gentleman by the name of Troy Sissom. I was told by an expert in the industry that there's no way he will qualify for RDAP. He reviewed his PSR, told me there was no way. We ended up employing a gentleman named Irving out of Delray Beach, Florida, and Irvin was actually able to do an assessment and overturn everything. We actually got him into the residential drug addiction program. So if you are in the same situation that Holli's in right now, where maybe you didn't have a strong substance abuse addiction prior to your indictment and it started after, doesn't necessarily mean there's no hope. It just means that there's more hurdles, there's more work to be done, but you should still pick up the phone and give a call if you're in that situation. So let's kind of continue where you're at right now. So you just explained, because you didn't prepare properly for the pre-sentence report, and when the probation officer said, should we just go with the information that you had from a prior meeting, and you were like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I went over everything, that wasn't the case, and because of that, it was sentenced higher. Did you prepare with a personal narrative or character reference letters by this point?
No, I hadn't. In fact, I was, again, still scouring the web, trying to find information, women specific, anything. Nothing was there. I then did a little bit more research, and I did find a prison consultant that I went through to. I actually hired Justin Paperny. And at that, I was supposed to have been sentenced on December 1st. This was around the October timeframe of 14. And he did assist me with putting kind of a template together to reach out for character reference. He helped me start writing my statement to the judge. Mostly I wrote it. He would review it. Again, my relationship with my prison consultant at first, it was great for the fact that he would respond to me, and we were working on these things. And my biggest, again, problem that I had was my pre-sentence report, and I didn't feel that when the judge on December timeframe was going to look at this, that I was just going to get hammered. And so we did ask to delay, and they did accept that through the holidays, because I wanted to see about trying to get the pre-sentence report corrected. And that's, you can't correct, but you can certainly do addendums to it. Right.
So I'm going to imagine that, okay, so at this point, you had already done your pre-sentence report. So Justin wasn't able to help you prepare for that because you met him after the fact. So, right. But being that you did not get the sentence that was recommended, I'm going to assume that Justin's guidance with the personal narrative and your character references must have had some impact, because your sentence ended up being reduced by quite a bit.
I believe that the statement that I did write to the judge did get through to him. Again, Justin kind of disappeared as we were going through. From the time that I did my plea deal until I was sentenced, it was 1 year, because there were delays, right. And it was mostly from the prosecution side. And I had plenty of time to research and work on, what I was going to say. So yes, I felt, again, I had to do a lot of the work that, even though I had paid somebody to help me with.
And we've actually got we've got a gentleman in the room named, we got two questions. We got PC Fanatic. So if the feds drive, oh, never mind. That wasn't a question. We do have another question. We have a question from a gentleman by the name of Mike. He wants to know, and this is up to you if you want to answer or not. He wants to know how much Justin charges. It's completely up to you.
From other clients, I can tell you it's anywhere from $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, can be $15,000. Sometimes it can be $25,000. So
how much did you pay him?
I paid him a lot.
Okay.
We'll just say under 10.
We left it at that. Okay. So you paid Justin. You hired him as your prison consultant, and it sounds like he was able to help you with the personal narrative. I know that you have other issues there, but with the personal narrative, and the reason I'm focusing on that is because somewhere along the line, and maybe you can explain this so we understand it a little bit better, somewhere along the line, you went from looking at 37 plus months to receiving a sentence of 21 months. So what happened from the point of your pre-sentence report and the day of sentencing? What do you think contributed to a shorter sentence?
I believe the addendums that I kept fighting back and making my attorney work on to add to those, I believe that made an impact. And again, the statement that I made. Okay. So I tried to help correct the inaccuracies in my pre-sentence report. I wanted the judge to be able to get a true picture of who I was And that's what those addendums were. Yeah.
So you advocated on your own behalf. You took action. You got involved with your case. Maybe a little late in the game. Sounds like you really took action and got involved after the pre-sentence report came back and you saw this ridiculous, outrageous number of time that they were looking to give you. Do you think if you had taken more of a proactive approach, because when you hired your attorney, what was your thought on when you hire this attorney? In your mind, what kind of service did you imagine receiving for paying the type of money that you paid for two attorneys?
So I thought that my attorney would be able to handle my case, and that my prison consultant would be able to answer me every question about, again, pre-sentence, what do I need? What is the judge really looking for? How can I show them who I really am? Who do I need to reach out to? When I go to prison, what is it going to be like? Can you walk me through what it's going to be like, especially for even a woman? I know it's a very similar process for both, but I wanted all the information. I wanted everything. So yes, I became very proactive, but that's just in my nature. That's the type of business that I do. So I just kind of got into gear. I wanted the best outcome for myself, because at that point, I'm going to prison.
Right. Yeah. So once you got sentenced, they allowed you to self-surrender. How much time did they give you from the day you were sentenced to the time you had to turn yourself in?
So I sentenced on August 28th of 15, and I self-surrendered on October the 5th of 15.
So they gave you a decent amount of time.
Decent amount of time.
Was that requested, or did the judge just offer that?
Judge offered that.
Wow.
Judge did that.
Well, I know a lot of you ask me questions all the time. How much time do you receive to self-surrender? And I mean, it really depends. She didn't ask for anything, and they gave her from August to October. So they gave her a couple of months. I've seen guys get anywhere from a few weeks to several months. So it's all over the place. You can definitely ask for a date in an amount of time.
You've talked about this too, Dan. Even designation. We put a request in to go to Victorville. We put the request in. Again, it's just a request, but I was granted that as well.
And what made you choose Victorville?
It was 2.5 hours away from my home. I felt that it would be great. That way I could have better visits. It was just all about family at that point, coming to visit.
So you went to Victorville. So you got there. Tell us a little bit about, did you drive yourself? How did you get there? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
The morning of October 5th, the water heater went out the night before, so that was just real great. No hot shower in the morning, my last one. My husband drove me, and we stopped I had until 12 noon to self-surrender. The nice part about this is with doing the research that I had done previously, I had run into a family whose daughter was at Victorville, and she was expecting me. So that was actually kind of nice. She was able to pre-buy some things for me. So at least I knew I was going to have somebody that I kind of quasi knew. My husband, we stopped at Del Taco at 9 a.m. And I said, okay, I can't eat anything. We just need to get this over with. Drove then to the complex, and Victorville there's a men's penitentiary and 2 men's medium facilities and the women's camp, which the women's camp is right next door to the men's pen. I think that makes just a lot of sense. Yeah, put the highest violent and lowest of the low. But when you drive onto the complex, I mean, you just make a right and you go on, and there's no guard shack, there's nothing, and you drive into this desolate area, and I'm like, I can't believe this is where I'm going to be. You see the men's medium, they all have, the wire. It's so overwhelming. And we find this little tiny sign saying to the camp, and we pull up, and I'm like, this can't be the camp. It's just this front facade with 2 little, it looks like a small elementary school. And we get out of the car, and we go through the 2 doors, the entrance, and the guard's in there, And I said, I'm here to self-surrender. And he looked at me like, who are you? What are you doing here? Like, this isn't a camp. They weren't prepared for me, which I find completely.
But you were at the right place.
I was at the right place. He said, you need to stay right here. Let me go next door. So he goes outside the building again to the side door. That, again, it looks like just this, like, supply area that you would drop things off. And that's R&D, receiving and discharge. He comes back, tells me, follow me. And he goes, knocks on the door, and it's constantly just cracked open because the weather won't let it shut due to the weather. And the R&D person, the officer, comes and says, you can go ahead and kiss goodbye and go ahead and step on in.
So,
and how it was.
What was the moments leading up to, like, 10 minutes before you got there? What were you thinking about? What was going through your mind? What did you imagine this place looking like? Were you actually able to get some good insight as to what prison was going to be like?
Through this family, I was able to at least find out information about the women's camp. So at least I was a little bit more prepared. So I knew kind of what the process was going to be like because she had wrote back home to tell, her story. And so I was okay with, all right, I know this is coming. But again, driving there, I'm like, how am I going to keep my relationship? How am I going to do this for the next 18 and a half months?
How much time did you think you were going to serve?
I thought I was going to do, full 18 and a half.
In prison?
In prison. I really did. I thought it was 18 and a half in prison. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? I can't do this. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this.
What was going through your husband's mind? What were his concerns?
He was worried about my safety. He was worried about my sanity. He was worried about, he's trying to be supportive. It's just a hard day. I've never seen him look like he had. And he's a former Marine.
Helpless. Just a helpless look, like there's nothing I can do to stop the way.
He can do. Right. And that's the look. And I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to prison. My life is pretty much over. This is what it's going to be. And there's no joy. There's nothing.
So you get there. You're able to say your goodbyes. You give him a kiss. He rolls on his way. You go into R&D. What happens next? Okay.
I go into R&D. She puts me in this little tiny room. And again, it looks like a school check-in. And she hands me some papers, and it's general papers. Again, it's about fill out your name, fill out your address, it's also your laundry list on how many bras, how many pairs of underwear you're going to get, what your laundry bag contains.
So let's hold on. I meant to ask you something going up to this. What did you bring with you?
So every facility is different, and I had scoured everything trying to find out about Victorville. The friend was very helpful. All I brought in was I wore a white bra, a white pair of underwear, cotton underwear, hoping that I would be able to keep that. Wasn't able to keep that. I wore a pair of leggings that I knew if I didn't want to mail them home, just discard them, do whatever. And I wore a t-shirt and I wore flip-flops. Stuff that I just didn't even absolutely at all.
Sounds like you're going to the beach.
Sounded like I was going to the beach, the wrong type of beach.
So did you bring any documents with you? Did you bring any jewelry with you?
I did wear a gold wedding band, no stones, and I did have a pair of gold ball earrings. But I thought, well, perhaps they're going to make me send that home. They did not. They did let me keep that.
So you were able to keep the earrings as well.
I did.
Okay.
And I did have my medications in a plastic bag with me. I didn't need eyeglasses, but again, I had kind of the whole checklist. I didn't bring any legal documents. I didn't bring a contact sheet. I mailed the contacts list to myself there prior to, because I thought, don't take anything in. I've heard some officers let you keep them, some don't.
Right.
So I thought, let's get past that.
What about money for your commissary?
That morning, I failed to mention this. When we were driving up, I did Western Union. I put money on my books that morning. It took 2 hours from what I understand, and it was on there when I
So
went
right now,
to...
people are probably going, how the hell did you give yourself money? You're not in prison yet. So
I know.
Once you're sentenced, guys, once you've been sentenced and you're issued your BOP number, your registration number, at any time, once that number, and you know where you're going, you can actually go Western Union yourself money either online or walk into a store and do it. So when you get there, the money's waiting there for you. And that's what you did. You decided to do it on your way into prison. All right. So you're standing there, you walk in, you're wearing your t-shirt, flip-flops, your white bra, white underwear. Do they fingerprint you? What do they start doing?
She started putting the plates to do fingerprinting in the microwave to heat them up, and took my fingerprints, did another DNA swab. I had one when I did my plea agreement. I had DNA done by the marshals there. So this was the second time that I had DNA. And then she said, okay, we have to go do the squat and cough now. That's the next part. So we stepped into the bathroom. She put a brown sheet on the floor, and she said, go ahead and start taking everything off. And she watched me. I had to do it very slow. She said, stand over the sheet and lift each breast, went through my mouth, looked in my ears, obviously in my nose, hands out, bent from the front over, shook my hair out, asked me to turn around, asked me to bring my hands together, and as I was going down, to cough. And said, okay.
So did you know that this was going to be part of the process?
I did. I knew that was.
And how much easier did it make it knowing it, or was this something you were dreading? Because this isn't something people do on a daily basis, getting, strip searched and told to basically show every body part and cavities and open a cough. So what was that like? Was it humiliating at all?
No, I was prepared for it, and I just convinced myself, just like going to the doctor, seen one, seen it all, and just didn't even really let it faze me. I said, okay, I can get through this.
Okay, so you did all that, you strip searched,
yep.
And then what happened next? They dressed you out?
Then she hands me a pair of underwear, a jog bra, a t-shirt, and a smock dress. They put you at Victorville in a dress, all their newbies in a dress, and a pair of canvas tennis shoes, these little slip-on ones, that have been washed about 800,000 times. They're all different sizes. They got holes, and put your socks and those on, and you're looking pretty good at that point. I looked down and just went, I can't believe this, but okay.
Was there any relief coming in at this point? Were you starting to, or were you still anxious and nervous about the inmates that you're about to meet?
About the inmates. I'm more anxious about what the next is. I'm like, okay, I got through this. All right.
So how did she introduce you to that?
Okay. So at Victorville, there's 2 different units. There's about 250, 280 women total at the camp at Victorville, give or take. And they're broken up into 2, North and South unit. There are 2 different counselors to handle each. And she called the counselor from the South unit to tell me that I was ready. I sat there and waited and waited and waited, and he actually came and got me and took me to medical, because that's where they did the TB test. They went through my medication. They took my medication, by the way, and processed that portion. Again, a mental health screen questionnaire, and if you're going to do any harm to yourself, you feel, that's the type of questionnaire. After that, he took me from there. As we were walking back to the unit, the girls from the laundry were getting out for the day, because this has taken a long time, by the way. It was now close to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they grabbed me and said, hey, let's take her in here. And they proceeded to dress me out right there. I was lucky. I didn't have to wait for a laundry day to be.
Uh-oh. Well, we got to bring her back here. It looks like Skype just stopped working. Hold on one second, guys. And here I was thinking, this is working really smooth. So let's see what happened here. May have been on her end.
Dan?
Do we have you?
I don't know. Am I there?
I hear you, but I don't see you.
Okay.
Oh, and there she goes again. Let's let her call us back. Here she goes. Okay, I think we got you up now. There you are. Okay. Skype issues. We can deal with it. At least we didn't lose the live stream. All right, so let's kind of jump back into what you were just saying. So you were basically telling us you were going in and you're getting ready to meet these inmates.
I'm getting ready to meet the inmates. The girls actually are taking me into my unit, and it is just chaos because it's time where it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Girls are getting off work. They're coming back. They're getting ready for count. They're running around. They assign me to the multi-purpose room, and big, large room, very small, tiny bunk beds, small half lockers. One girl's grabbing my laundry bag and making my bed for me. Everybody's just coming up, kind of like welcoming. It's an overload moment because you're told, hey, somebody might want something from you. So don't be so extroverted like I normally am. Kind of a little bit reserved, watch your back. But that's not the type of greeting that I got. I will tell you that a lot of the women, again, came up to me, were saying, hey, how are you? I've been here such and such. This is my name. Let me take you on a tour. They do have mentors that they assign. And though the girls were just so exuberant, they just grabbed me and start telling me, okay, here's the multi-purpose room. Let's take you on a tour. Here's the TV room. Here's the video rooms with the telephone area. Here's the bathroom. And then
what were a lot of these women? What were a lot of them? What was their? Were they similar to you as far as they had some white collar crimes, or is this what you expected, or were you thinking it was going to be a bunch of thuggy criminal type of women in prison?
I'm seeing people, with tattoos around their eyes, and that kind of threw me off. But some of the nicest women, again, I got to know so many. After that point, I really kind of relaxed. But I'm still got my guard up. Most of white-collar women came up to me, and white. And I can say that Hispanics, a lot of the Hispanics are with the Hispanics, a lot of the blacks with the blacks, whites with the whites. But I was able to always, talk in a group, and just always had a very big, diverse group. And but I did notice that particular aspect.
So there was politic in the sense of, because we talk about this a lot in camps and lows where races will intermix, commingling, doing sports and stuff together. But at the same time, typically they do usually include themselves in their own activities. They hang out with their own race. But you had no issue. There was no prison politic rule, inmate rule that said you couldn't go up to another skin color and have a cooking day where you guys decide to make meals together.
Right. So we're approaching 4 o'clock. And the girls take me back to the multi-purpose room, getting ready for the stand-up count. And I'm like, okay, I'd heard about these counts, and I'm like, okay, what is this? And I went through my first count at 4:30. Standing. Officers come in and basically count. And they got the count right. They didn't have to recount. As you can see, I know you're laughing, and for the audience, yeah, counts are interesting.
Yeah, you definitely just brought back some memories there when you were in a prison with 200 plus inmates. I was in a unit with 195 guys, right. And we had 3,000 inmates. So it was a daily miscount where they count everybody at 4 p.m. count, and when they do that miscount, they got to start the whole count over again, and then they both have to come up with the same number. So yeah, that's definitely aggravating. So that's a great point, guys. Now, how important is it? What are the basic rules if somebody's watching right now that's getting ready to go into prison, and if they're not fortunate enough to have such a welcoming committee that you had, what are some basic rules when it comes to count time?
Watch what others are doing. Always watch what others are doing. Meaning, always keep an eye on the clock. Always. Everything is scheduled. So get those counts down. If you're in an area that there's nobody around, you definitely don't want to be there. You want to be where there's people at first until you get down the right schedule.
So you got there, you went through your first day.
Standing there, no, it gets better. I got to move from the multi-purpose room immediately into the condos. I got to move immediately. And what that is, again, that's what you're assigned. We had 8 foot high cinder block walls. Just imagine a big Costco with rows, and this is where our bunk areas are. A bunk, 2 people, 2 lockers, 2 plastic chairs, small little writing table. And I was assigned to probably the best bunkie that anybody could ever have. And I hate that word bunkie. Roommate. So, yeah, she was very helpful.
So it's not cubes. It's just a big dorm setting with rows of bunk beds is the camp at Victorville.
Correct.
Where I was different for me is it wasn't cells, but it was concrete cubicles with 6-foot walls displaying each cubicle. So now you went through that, you got into your condo, you moved up into your
condo, went to eat, came back, had my first, prison meal with pepper steak, and we'll never forget it. I'm like, okay, it's not that bad. And I'm like, all right, I'll get through this. Came back, and it's just loud noise, women talking constantly. Microwaves slamming. There's 2 microwaves. People doing laundry. People over in the phone bank. People, just loud. It's never quiet unless it's 12, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And definitely Fridays and Saturdays are loud.
The weekend.
And I'm on the top, by the way. I got a top bunk, so I'm on the top and I can see everything. Meaning I can see everybody else that's on the top bunk. I can see pretty much what's around me and other cubicles.
What were the mattresses like?
Oh, the lovely mattresses. They were ellipses. They're not rectangular. You take them and you make them, and your feet hang off because you got to tie your sheets on. That's the first thing I also learned is how to make a bed. I was shown this is how you do it. This is how you keep it. They are just filled with just filler.
Were these like the green plasticky looking mattresses?
Ones, yeah.
Okay, so it's got like the stuffing inside of them.
Stuffing inside, plastic, and so every time you move, you're on plastic, so it sounds like you're on plastic.
Right.
You've got your sheets, and you've got 2 blankets, one on there, and you basically sleep on top of I've learned to do this, not everybody did, but you sleep on top of your bed, and you just put one cover over you. So that way when you get up in the morning, you can make it pretty easy.
Yep.
That's what you do.
We're going to answer a few questions here before they get too backlogged here. So first question I got, George, if you're still in the room, George Kaler, he wants to know, this goes back to when you were first going through it. He wants to know how your family coped with the whole process.
My family was very strong, and it was very difficult for them because, again, I was in the media so much. I was just page after page on Google. They knew the real truth. I mean, they knew the hours that I was working. They stood by me, and they actually even would tell others when they would ask questions. It was really hard on them. They lost friends. They were former military people. I mean, just people in general can be very judgmental. It was hard. They lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of friends, and I was so upset for them. It just was another thing that made me, it was so hard.
Because they ultimately became one of your victims for
they did. They didn't
regardless of how guilty you were, but those decisions now are affecting everybody around you that you care about.
And they, again, were supportive of me. They stood right beside me. They were in court when I was sentenced. They came to visit me. They wrote me. They put money on my books. I mean, you name it, they were there.
Was there relief once you got there and they got to see where you were at and you spoke to them about what was going on, your bunkie, moving into your condo? Obviously, I don't know how you explained it to your family, but when I got to prison, my kids, my friends, my family was the same way. They were terrified for not just my safety, but for, I can't believe he's got to go through this. So I did everything that I could do while I was in prison to paint the best picture possible to try to release some of the anxiety that they were feeling. Is this a process that you went through as well?
See, a lot of people have, said paint the good picture. I told the truth, and I wanted them to know that I still had some anxiety, that I'm still a little worried about things, but that with everything, I was going to handle it, and that not to worry as much. But again, I didn't want to give them any type of scenario that I really hadn't lived or had gone through. So.
And I know we've got a crazy story to tell here in a minute, but before we get into that, let's couple more questions here. So Christina Smith, she's asking, are female products readily accessible, like Advil, feminine products, basic necessities, vitamins, things like this? Was this stuff that you could get on a regular basis?
So we did have a closet that had pads, and yes, pads were readily available at Victorville.
Pads. So we're for the men out there, we're referring to maxi pads.
Maxi pads.
Okay.
Use maxi pad for everything. We use them to clean. We use them to scrub everything. Let me tell you.
But they did not give you tampons, correct?
We had tampons at first, and then all of a sudden they just started not reordering them, and then all of a sudden they showed up on Commissary for you to purchase. So it was like, what's going on here? Going to make some money, huh?
Because I think they just changed that, right? If you may know more about that than me, but I just got done reading something that tampons are now available everywhere, women's prisons, at least in the BOP, the federal prison system. Okay, so you can now. What about headache medicine, vitamins, things like that? What can you purchase?
You had to purchase any type of ibuprofen. Aspirin, you had to purchase that on Commissary.
But you can, but this is all accessible, right?
Yeah, it is accessible unless they run out, and if they do, so be it.
Right.
I mean, until the next order comes in.
What kind of stuff, were you surprised with how much stuff that you were able to purchase on Commissary, or did you feel like the Commissary was not very accommodating?
I felt that we always had items, and they either would be sometimes in the warehouse, and they're just too lazy to get the count in to move it over to the Commissary. So, I mean, the product was there, but it doesn't mean that we were able to purchase it. So knowing that it's there and not being able to purchase it was, it drove me crazy. Most everything that you need, hygiene products, yes, you can purchase. Boots, tennis shoes, they may not be the most fancy one, they can run out. So you had to be really careful, again, with what you purchased and how much you purchased, because they could run out.
And that brings us to another good question that we got from Greasy, who's actually one of our clients. Greasy wants to know, she's got two questions for you. The first, I'm going to go ahead and ask you both of her questions. She asked a question about what did the medicine you brought in, what did they do with that? Did they end up giving? I know they're not going to give it to you to hold, but did they allow you to still get it at sick call, or did you have to get re-prescribed?
That's a really good question. So for me, I had to be re-prescribed, and then they gave me something on their formulary chart that was the equivalent to it. So I didn't get the exact brand, but something close to it. And I had to go pill line on.
You said for you, so were other inmates able to get their own medication?
Some that did come in were able to keep on their person, and they were able to keep it. So it was kind of like no rhyme or reason at Victorville. Now,
but obviously not if it was a Schedule II or anything. It had to be like, ibuprofen or something, I imagine.
It was something like ibuprofen, or if it was a diuretic, things like that. They were able to keep on their person. Psoriasis cream, they were able to keep.
Okay.
So things like that.
All right. So Greasy's other question was, let me see if I can see it here. She was asking, she wanted to know how much money did you spend on a regular basis monthly, and how much money did you initially spend when you first got there? And we didn't ask, so you put money on your books as you were self-surrendering.
Yeah.
When were you actually able to go shopping?
So, I was very fortunate. I moved into the condos when I got there, and the next day was shopping day for me. Tuesday was the commissary day. So I got to go shopping immediately the next day. I was able to purchase, and I had, again, taken the website at Victorville, looked at one. You can download the commissary form. It may not be the most current, but it gives you an idea of what you can purchase and kind of the prices. So I went for items like tennis shoes, sweats, all my hygiene products, some food, but I went with more like things like tuna, nothing. And I didn't do a huge food purchase at that point. It was mostly about getting a watch again.
How much were you allowed to spend though per week?
So you can spend a total of, what is it? I just went blank. $360 a month.
Okay.
You have to budget that between commissary,
right,
email, video chats, and telephone. Okay, so $6 for video chats, 5 cents a minute for email, and then $3.15 for a 10-minute phone call. You get 300 minutes a month.
Now, so real quick question on that. So $360 a month to disperse through all of these different ideas. If you wanted to go spend that in 1 week, could you?
You can go spend that in 1 week. You cannot keep going to the commissary. Once you're maxed out on $360 per month, that's all you can spend. Now, if you need more money for your phone or email or video chat, you can have more money coming in. Because mine was a white-collar case and I owed restitution, obviously everybody has to be enrolled in the financial responsibility program as well.
And that's called FRP for those of you that are wondering.
So from what I learned is the more money you have on the books, the more money that they may decide to take for restitution. So ultimately, I could only spend $180 a month is what it got down to because of my FRP.
How much were they taking? They were taking the rest on FRP?
Yes, they were.
Wow. Because I met while I was in prison, I had that owed millions, and they were taking $10 or $15 every quarter from them. Why?
But my counsel, I was really pushed down, so I really had to manage well.
You were budgeting. You were on a budget, 100, because I was spending $125 every week, or whatever my max was. I was spending it week after week on. But initially, that first purchase, that's your most expensive, right? Because how much did you buy a radio or an MP3 player?
I didn't buy one from the commissary. I kind of did a little deal and bought one from another inmate that was leaving.
MP3 or a radio?
Radio.
Okay.
I didn't get it free when I was there.
Okay, so real quick to explain this. So she bought a radio off of an inmate, and the radio is just an AM FM radio. But if you were to buy an MP3 player off of an inmate, you would have issues, right? Because every 14 days, you have to plug that into a kiosk with your own information or else it stops working, correct?
Right, that is correct.
And it works. You can do that with another inmate if that inmate is still there. But God forbid that inmate gets moved, gets out, gets in trouble. Right. Now you've just paid for an MP3 player that you can no longer use, which we saw guys make issues. So you bought a radio. How much is a radio on commissary, roughly?
What were they running? 35.
And how much did you pay for it?
10.
And what was your currency? How did you buy the radio?
I bought my radio with hygiene products.
Hygiene products. What was the number one currency at the camp there? I'm curious to know if it's similar for men.
Well, what was it for men?
What?
What was it for men?
For men, it was compound stamps. I don't know if you guys had compound stamps or mackerel.
Or mackerel. See, We had the mackerel thing for a while going on, but mostly, it was kind of universal, whatever somebody would charge, and, a shampoo, or it wasn't just specifically one thing, and it wasn't stamps. So.
Okay. Did you buy your watch off of an inmate, or did you buy that off of commissary?
I bought that off of commissary.
And how much was your watch?
I think my watch was $25.
Okay, so you bought a watch, you bought sneakers. So initially, when you first get to prison, what are some of the biggest things that you would recommend somebody get right away? Obviously, everyone knows like hygiene and
right,
food.
Get your hygiene, but get yourself a pair of tennis shoes.
Tennis shoes.
Killer. Those boots are killer. The first couple of days, they're really bad.
Is it cold? Is it cold there?
It can be cold in the winter. It's high desert, so. Yeah, and that's why I purchase sweats. And it's always cold in the unit. Freezing cold.
She just nailed it on the head, guys. It doesn't matter. You could be in South Florida where I was, and it was always freezing in the unit. So when you first get to prison, one of the biggest things you're going to want to get your hands on is sweatpants and a sweatshirt, I would imagine, right?
Absolutely.
Which you can buy off of an inmate, or you can buy off the commissary. I bought mine off of another inmate. But these are things that you need, because trying to sleep at night with the blankets that they give you,
no.
It takes a minute. It takes a minute to adjust. So, you went through you got all your commissary items. You got onto a weekly shopping. You got into your budget. I know that you were sentenced to 21 months.
Right.
But you only served 13 of that in the actual camp, right?
In the actual camp, I only did 13, and there's so many things that we can talk about, but 13 at the camp, and then 2 in solitary confinement in the SHU in San Bernardino County Jail.
Okay, so let's pause on that for a minute. So, you guys heard that correct, okay? She had to spend 2 months in solitary confinement. Now, the camp she was at did not have a SHU, meaning a solitary confinement area. So, at the camp, if you make a violation, cell phones, and she's going to tell us what she did in a minute. If you go to the SHU, in most camps, women's camps, where they do not have another women's upper security with a SHU, like for me, I would get sent to, and I could go to the medium and do my time in the SHU with the medium. But because they didn't have one, they had to go to county jail. So, and this is just a regular county jail, right?
It was the oldest county jails, yes.
And you were in a cell by yourself?
I was in a cell by myself. Solitary.
I'm just picturing this right now. So, okay, so before we get into you talking to the wall and counting bugs as they roll by you, let's talk a little bit about what did you do to go to the SHU?
I actively blogged about my journey. I wanted to be able to help other women that were going through
that. Say that again. It cut out for a second. Say that one more time.
I started blogging about my experience even before self-surrendering.
How did you blog? Were you getting on the internet and blogging?
I was typing up my blogs and sending it to a friend who would then in turn send it to my prison consultant, and he would put it up on his site.
Okay.
That means the prison is looking at everything I'm typing and I'm writing. I happen to be working for the warden in the men's medium 2 facility. And the day that I went to work, I had just gotten through the security. It's kind of like airport security you go through. And they all of a sudden told me that I needed to be sequestered, and they had an incident, and everybody is starting to run. There's lights going off, flickering, the flashy lights. People are all running inside. The warden had been stabbed, and so had the lieutenant at mainline, which is lunch for the men. An inmate got behind the warden and slashed him from the groin area all the way up through past his neck, and then stabbed the lieutenant. So I have been now sequestered to the visitation room, which is at the front, and there's all windows, and I can see everything that's happening. I can see the response that's coming in. I can see the warden now being taken out, and, blood everywhere, and they airlift him. And I'm watching this, and the women at the camp are left completely on their own. I mean, all the officers left. They didn't say how to get back. They didn't care about the women get back. So the women you can't just walk back to camp. because you can catch an escape charge. I mean, these are very serious things. So the women are left to their own device on how they're going to get back. And I'm watching pickup trucks with guns, you know, the guys are in the back. What if they drop one and they're weaving around the women? There was just nothing. And then once the incident was over and I'm watching again the show, the officer says, okay, you can go back to the camp now. And I said, okay, well, how am I going to get back? Well, I don't know. Who do I call? I go, I don't know who you call. So eventually a counselor came and we went back and we got back. But again, there was no officers at the camp. We were never counted. We were free to roam. They never turned the lights on outside. They were too busy dealing with that. My whole point was, what about the safety of the women? What happens if that was a diversionary tactic? So what I did is I wrote about the particular incident. And then the prior week, there had been a bombing at the men's penitentiary. They had a bomb, and it was a gang fight. And I wrote about that. And it was public knowledge by this time. I mean, it had been picked up by news media that the warden had been stabbed. And so my blog comes out. I go to work the following day, and all hell breaks loose.
So you blogged about all of this information.
Yeah.
You blogged about the warden getting sliced. You blogged about leaving all the women unattended. You blogged about the men in the pickup trucks weaving around women. Guns possibly could have fallen out. What would have happened?
Right.
Women were completely left helpless as far as there's nobody there to defend if anything did happen. There was no direction given as to how the women should get back to the camp.
Correct.
So you decided to blog about this. And when she says she's typing, she's not talking about on a typewriter. She's talking about on the prison email system. She's typing an email home to a friend that the prison reads all of this information, or has the ability to read all of this information. So they saw that you wrote this home. Did they see it at that point, or did they see it on the actual blog on the internet?
From what I was told later, they stated that they only saw it on the blog.
Okay. So they saw it on the blog. So what happened?
So I go to work the next day. The assistant warden, acting warden, is there, and he tells me, and I'll just be very blunt with the audience, get the fuck out of his office. He takes me by the back of my shoulder and starts pushing me out from the warden's office into the main area, and told the officer there to make sure that I don't fucking move, that I fucking stay there until my counselor comes to get me. And the next thing I know is SIS, with Special Investigative Service, kind of like the FBI of prisons.
It's the police in the prison.
Police in the prison comes out, and I should have known something because he bends down in my ear and he goes, "Prison sucks sometimes, doesn't it?" And I'm like, what in the world? And obviously I'm like, this must be about my blog. He's walking out and he's putting gloves on. And again, I should have paid attention. And so it's a little while. All the girls that are cleaning in the lobby are like, what in the world is going on? And, you know, because again, camp level, we just don't have all of this. So my counselor was gone that day. The other unit's counselor came to get me, puts me in the van and tells me, hey, I don't know really what this is about. Apparently you wrote something and they didn't like it. We're going to go back to the camp and talk to your unit team manager. Let me do all the talking. You just stand there. It's going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen. You're going to be okay. So we go back, go see the unit team manager, and the only thing that she says is, you're going to food service. And I'm assuming the kitchen. And so I asked her, is this AM or PM detail? She said, just check the call out. And I'm like, okay. I get from her office, I go back in the condos, and all the girls are sitting on top of their bunks, and everybody's like, oh my God, you just got shook down. SIS was it just annihilated your area. Sure enough, they tore it up like you wouldn't believe. And I'm like, okay. And then at that point, my bunkie came back from her job, just the coolest person, and said, okay, let's give it a minute. Let's put things back in order, and let's just go about your business. And I was waiting to hear for my name, and I got called overhead. Sure enough, here it comes. I thought, okay, here we go. They put me in the visitation room for 3 hours. And then after the third hour, they came back. An officer says, "What's your name?" And I'm like, "I'm the only one in here." I said, "Coleman." And he said, "You're going to food service. Get out of here." So I left. Well, obviously, they have 24 hours to write an infraction,
Right.
a shot.
To serve it to you.
And right, to serve it to you. And I knew that was probably going to happen, so it was a very difficult night. The food service warehouse is where they put me the next day, and they called me immediately at 8:25, 5 minutes to spare. And SIS came in and sat down, and that's when they shoved this piece of paper and says, "We're going to give you a level 1 shot."
So
And
this is
that
a 100 series shot.
a 100 series shot.
So let's
Here we
explain
go.
to people that are watching right now. You have 3 levels of shots, right? You have a 100, a 200, and a 300. A 100 being the most severe, a 300 being you didn't clean behind your bunk.
Right.
So you got a
Yeah,
100 series shot.
100 series shot. Can take your good time away, can put you at a higher rate facility. So the SIS officer just started going off, and then told the other SIS officer to quit writing, and then went off the page and unscripted and just gave me his personal opinion of what he thought of me and what he was going to see to it that could happen to me, wouldn't happen to me. After his little rant, he gets up and he leaves, and I'm sitting there. So I'm like, okay, what's going to happen next? My counselor comes by, and he comes in, and he said, okay, if I can get you to meet with DHO, the disciplinary hearing officer, which you have the right to do. Normally it takes a couple of weeks, but if you can do it today, do you want to meet with him? And I said, yes, I do. So he was able to arrange that. The DHO officer comes in, sits down, and says, personally, I don't like what you wrote, but professionally speaking, you didn't say anything that was untrue or that the public already didn't know. So I'm expunging your shot.
And this happened the same day?
It happened literally 35 minutes after I was presented the shot.
Okay.
So he leaves. I'm still sitting there. Next thing I know, here comes the officers, and they said, let's go. I go where? They go, you're going to the SHU. I said, they expunged my shot. They said, that's not what we heard.
Wow. So
And
did they expunge it
They
at
did.
that point?
It was expunged before I even left the facility.
Okay, so now, so you're just thinking, what the hell's going on? So what did they put you in handcuffs? What was next?
They actually didn't handcuff me. They just put me in the back of the little car. They did not handcuff me. I haven't been handcuffed through this whole process.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Nice.
I know it's crazy. And they take me to San Bernardino County, process me just like somebody that's been arrested and going to county jail. And I sat in intake for probably a good 7 hours, and late into 2, 3 in the morning, finally get changed over into my lovely oranges, the orange attire, and got my little mat, the little tiny blanket that's falling apart, and a tub, and off to solitary. They put me in my own cell, and that's where I stayed for the duration of 60 days.
So they basically gave you a big gray Tupperware with a bedroll. It's got your mat, your sheet, if there was a pillow, and a towel.
And I'm taken to, again, you have to, there's a process of how to walk and how they open each portion of the cell areas until you get to your particular cell. I pass this open area that's the shower. It's just black. The shower curtain's hanging. It's just, I'm going to have to shower in that, and that's where you're going to have to shower. I had a toilet, a sink. I had running, dripping water, cold water, no hot water. And again, I had it was an over-under type of cell situation. So again, I had a top type of situation where I had to climb up on a ladder to get into my
Was it a one-man cell, or was it a two-man, but you were just the only person in it?
I was a one-man.
Okay, so you're a one-man cell, and you broke up for a second. I didn't hear if you said it. How big was this cell?
It's not very big. I mean, we're talking about you can't even bend over or sit on the little small writing desk stool. I mean, you can literally, I couldn't even stretch my arms out.
Okay.
Stretch my arms out.
And how often were you allowed out of there?
I only saw sunlight twice in 60 days for 35 minutes, and that's not what's supposed to happen. But from my experience, I was only let out twice.
So for 24 hours a day, for the most part of 60 days, you were inside of the room. They didn't let you out at all.
Correct. Well, you got 1 hour a day, and you never knew what time you were going to be let out into kind of this walking area. Again, it's still just they open your cell door, and you can walk the area in front of the other cells. There's two phones at the end. They're pay phones. I told you the shower at the end, and there was a kiosk to order commissary type of items. But that's it. You got 1 hour. If you got out at 5 a.m., the phones didn't come on until 6. So you couldn't call your attorney. You couldn't call your family. Again, and there was also money associated with this. But you had to decide, take a shower,
Or
make
use
a
the
phone call. You got 1 hour and walk. And otherwise, you're in your cell.
So did the lights stay on the whole time in this cell?
Lights are on 24/7. No clock. No clock. Nothing. So I really think that was the hardest thing. I always said my sentencing was hard. No. Going to the SHU and living through that was the hardest thing for me.
What was the... it's just, I mean, I know exactly what you went through. I got sent to the SHU.
Right. I didn't know I was going to be there 60 days. I didn't know. I mean, after 30 days, I'm like, how long am I going to be here? Am I going to be here months? I mean, there are people that are in transit or waiting for trial that are being held at this particular county jail that are federal cases. And, I mean, they're there. Some people have been there 2 years. I'm like, I don't even know how you lived through something like that.
In solitary confinement for 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've met them in medical. I will say I had rather good medical attention, but the way that they bill it to good old taxpayers, I was checked out quite a bit.
While you were there? What was the food like that they served you in county versus the food that you were receiving at the camp in federal prison?
Horrendous, night and day. And even though I had room service, it brought to me every day. It was mostly sandwiches. There's a lot of bologna, green bologna. You hear about the story about that. It just really no good fruits and vegetables. Breakfast was, again, really carb loaded. You either had cereal, sometimes it was just cold, nasty. And
the commissary items, was it the same type of commissary choices that you had in prison?
Not as much. You were very limited and very expensive. So, a tuna was like $1.89. I'm trying to remember. It was ridiculous. I still have it written down in my notes, but yeah.
So you were there for 2 months. Did you have access to books?
To have a library cart would come around, an inmate would bring, you could fill out a little slip of paper to request a particular type of genre of book, and that inmate was released, and they never found somebody to replace her. So during that time, I only had library books twice.
So how many books did you read in the 60 days that you were in there?
You try and smuggle them and move them down from one cell to another and, hope that you get one. I think I read only 4 books.
Wow.
And you little golf pencil, you're not given a pen,
right.
And they give you only a couple pieces of paper to begin with. So you have to purchase those items. So even writing became, very difficult.
So what did you do for most of your 24, let's say you were awake for, I'm sure you tried to sleep as much as possible, but even then you're awake for at least 8, 9, 10 hours a day. What did you do with your time?
What I wanted to do after this, I said, I want people to know about this process. I want people to know that there are people, the BOP does not follow through on what their policies are. I want to show light on, not everybody's bad, but there are a lot of things that are broken that has to be fixed. So I concentrated in trying to develop a plan for afterwards.
And you were writing this stuff down? Is that what you were doing?
Writing stuff down, trying to take mental notes, keep going over it, going, okay, part 1, part 2, what else do I want to do? Trying to develop a plan. And that's what kept me actually also sane.
It is definitely an experience that you can imagine these people that are, death row, people that are in solitary confinement for months and years. It can really create a dysfunctional mentality to where you become broken and really institutionalized crazy. It's sad. It really is sad to see that that's how they allow people to live. And you got to witness that, unfortunately. A white-collar criminal starting off as an executive for a major corporation is now not only in prison, and I'm sure when you first started going through this process, before you knew you were going to prison, your thought of prison was probably exactly what you experienced in solitary confinement, because I know that was my idea of what prison was actually like. And going through solitary confinement, I was only there 27 days. That 27 days was worse than the entire 13 months that I spent in prison. And I had a cellmate at some of the times in my solitary confinement, to where you were you yourself, and that's it. So you decided mentally that this wasn't going to fucking break you down. You decided to take notes. You decided you're going to share this information when you get out. You read what you could. You wrote down what you could. You ate their shitty food. And what happened after the 60 days? Being now backing up, you told us that DHO dismissed this. What grounds? How did they decide to keep you there for 60 days when this was never actually processed?
So I have to tell you, my attorney could not get any information. The BOP does not have to say anything about you. You are owned by them. They don't have to say anything. The only thing that the marshal's office actually would say, because they were looking at about transit, if I'm going to be moved to, did my shot stick, and am I going to be sent to a higher facility, or am I going to be able to go to a camp? They only said that she is still camp eligible. So we knew that if I'm going to be moved, at least I'm still going to go to a camp, and we'll have to deal from it at that point. On the 60th day, though, I hear the words, roll it up, which means get your mat and get everything, and here we go. And they're going to start doing the process of, release / transit.
Let me ask you real quick. What felt better, the day they told you to roll it up, or the day you got released from prison?
Oh, I don't know. They're pretty both. I heard roll it up, and I'm like, if I ever hear that again, that express, roll it up. I was like, okay. I was like, okay, what's next? I knew that Thursdays were Con Air Day, transit days, and if they don't get you up early in the morning to help process you and get you out, then you're not going to be going by Con Air. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to be taken by the marshals and by bus someplace. As I'm doing my paperwork, signing, I see at the bottom saying released to Victorville, meaning I'm going back to Victorville. And so I kind of took a breath and went, okay, well, at least I know I'm going back there.
Going back home.
Going back home. And it wasn't more than an hour and a half later that my unit team manager and the secretary came to pick me up. And the one, she made this statement. She goes, I bet the camp looks like a palace now compared to this. And I said, indeed. And that's all I said. Got back.
Why were you gone 60 days?
Yeah. Well, that's what, next I had to go back through R&D. And they had to reissue everything. I had been gone past 30 days, and with the BOP, you have to, again, fill out the mental health questionnaire. You have to see the doctor.
Intake all over again.
And the doctor's like, what? They were confused because they're like, I go, I've been in the SHU for 60 days. And they said, we don't see that. So every time I did a cop-out to get a copy of my original infraction or shot, I was told from DHO, we do not keep shots on file if they have been expunged. They would never provide me with a copy of my shot. They acted like it never happened.
So they just never explained why they kept you 60 days?
Correct.
To this day, you don't know?
To this day, I would have conversations with my counselor. He'd tell me get out of his office. I'd have a conversation with my case manager, and she's like, well, you were under investigation, and, the infraction. The good news is it not on your record? So.
Did you take back to blogging right after this? Did you go right back to emailing and sending stuff home, or were you a little bit frightened now by the way they would treat it?
But the commitment to my family, they said, please don't do anymore. Don't do anything until you're out. We just don't want to see this happen to you again.
Right. So you just started making notes, mental notes?
So, which I started then doing a journal and keeping all my writing. So that is my shoe story.
That is crazy. So you got past the shoe. Did you go back to your same unit? Were everyone wow, people must have been just like, why were you gone for so long?
Everybody was wonderful. It's kind of at that point, the girls were like, Norma Ray. They were great.
And I'm sure there was all kinds of crazy myths going around that you got to come back and set the record straight. But I imagine there was all kinds of stories going around.
They knew I wrote, and they knew this is why.
Okay.
They knew. They were, again, all the women were fantastic. I got to go back to my same exact cubicle with my same bunkie. She wouldn't give up on me. She wouldn't even take off. She kept my bed made for more than a month. She didn't.
So you got to go back to your bunkie?
Got to go back to my bunkie.
Okay,
so
nice.
Went back, and it was, again, kind of like they left me alone at that point as well. I didn't get harassed.
They probably knew there were some screw ups on their end that could have gone a lot worse in their situation as well. So you got back into your routine. You continued going through. You stopped blogging. You just maintained your job, maintained your day to day.
Right.
And this is pretty much how you wrote out the rest of your time until you got released.
August the 4th until January the 5th.
January 5th is when you got released?
January 5th is when I was going to the halfway house. I got 3.5 months halfway house.
So they gave you 3.5 months at the federal halfway house. And where did you go to that? Where did you do your halfway house?
So I did my halfway house time in Greenville, South Carolina. And everybody I know is going, well, she's in San Diego. Why didn't she? I had relatives I was able to change my residence to South Carolina and Greenville. We felt that it's a smaller halfway house, and maybe that would be a better thing for me. And they approved my residence, and I was able to go to Greenville. But when I got there, even though I had a plan, I had a job offer. The job offer was working remotely, though, and I was doing my paralegal studies, which is a full-time student. When I met with my caseworker and the facility manager, they said, no, we aren't going to let you go to home detention. We won't let you do this particular job because there's no accountability, meaning there's not a manager standing over my shoulder, and I'm not able to pick up the phone, even though from the company phone, and call in and check in, and they can't call in and check in from where you're sitting because it would have been a work from home type of position. So they said no on that. I said, well, I'm a full-time student, and they tout all of education as being a reentry.
Right.
And again, my experience was like in fact, they wanted me to stop doing my studies while I was there.
So you were going to school.
Right.
You were in the halfway house. What was the halfway house like?
It was small. It was a former Piggly Wiggly.
Okay. Was it really?
It really was a Piggly Wiggly.
Wow, okay.
Converted over. And there was a men's area and a female, and the women could go into the main room on the even hours. The men could only go out on the odd, and you could only be out there from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. in the main area. So, it was in a bad part of town. Nobody wants a halfway house in their city.
Was it co-ed or just women?
It was co-ed.
Okay.
So, when I got there, it was very small, only 8 beds. 6 women were there when I was there, and it went down to just 2 of us for 2.5 of the months that I was there. So it was very, very. And I got along very well with the lady.
In order to be able to say you wanted to go to Walmart, or you wanted to go buy food, or you wanted to go have lunch or breakfast or dinner with a family member, how did that work?
Yep. That didn't work because I didn't have a job. So the passes to go out, except for the only type of pass I ever got was a religious pass on Sunday to go to church. I didn't have to go to Walmart because my family members did bring me the things that I needed, but I could have put a hygiene pass, but the hygiene pass had to be documented what you're going to purchase, and it couldn't be anything more. So if you brought something else that wasn't on your list, then you can bring it in.
And let's say, I know you didn't go, but if you were going to go, because a lot of people ask questions what you're allowed to do in the halfway house, if you were going to go on a hygiene pass, could you say, hey, today I'm going to go to Walmart and put in a pass that same day?
No. Passes were due on a particular day. They were due on a Tuesday. So you had to have, and you couldn't, you could go on the weekend. Again, you had to document if you're going by car, by bus. You had to have the license plate and the name of the individual that was driving you. So no, it had to be approved. You had to put it in ahead of time. So
you have to turn it in by Tuesday. And
right.
For what day? When could you start going?
So you could go. You could start going. They would approve them and give them out Tuesday evening, and so you could literally go the next day on Wednesday.
Okay, that's not bad. My halfway house, you had to give them a week's notice.
Wow.
You had to turn it in by Wednesday for the following Sunday. So it was, you're really backlogged. So, okay. And they track travel time and everything. If you're driving, they know how long it takes you to get from here to Walmart. So they time that. They look on Google Maps. They tell you exactly, okay, it takes 15 minutes to get to Walmart. We'll give you 15 minutes to get there. We're going to give you an hour to shop, 15 minutes to get back. So an hour and a half. With an hour and a half, you got to be back, checked in, breathalyzing, possibly given a UA. Halfway house is not the most pleasant experience.
It is not.
You didn't even get weekend social passes then, did you?
I did not get weekend social passes, no.
Rough.
So, no, it was rough. It was rough. I did have a diluted UA, just to let everybody know. I take a diuretic. It's my medication. But, again, that can even get you into trouble. So you have to, again, have that rapport with your case manager to talk about things like that.
Right.
I had to go. I experienced, even though I had a valid California license, they wanted me to get a South Carolina license. So I had to go through the process of that. And they did give me a pass to go get that. But I had to call. They wanted me to call from the DMV. And they said, sure, you can use their phone. And when I asked the DMV to call, of course, the lady was like, we don't do that. So it puts you in that high anxiety. There's just a lot of scrambling that you got to do.
Okay, so now
I did my 3.5 months.
Right. What happens after that?
April 12th, I am finished with the halfway house. I go check in with the probation department. You have, I believe, 48 hours to check in with your probation officer, fill out paperwork. And, of course, my first stop on the way to my family member's home was Walmart to pick up some items. But what happens after that, my probation officer set up a time about a week after I got out and was coming to the home. He wanted to inspect it, and not only that, but then go over the terms of my supervised release, talk about, where I was with finding a job. And really, I mean, that's what you start on. You start into your supervised release.
So you're on probation. And how much probation did you get?
I have 3 years.
3 years, okay. And you've been on it for how long now? You said since
April 12th.
April 12th. Okay, so you have 3 years, and I'm assuming, now being you have restitution, is early termination a possibility?
Probably not. For the fact that another thing that I've been fighting is, for those with restitution, my judge, there was something that the prosecution slipped in, and we thought we could catch it, is that he stated that I had to pay $3,000 a month for the next 20 years for $954,000.
Is that what you're doing right now?
No.
Okay.
But that was the expectation of the probation officer when he's looking at my supervised release. It stated in my judgment and commit that I was to pay $3,000 a month.
Wow.
And here I am. I'm worried about that because I don't want to be violated and to have to go back.
Of course.
So there's another thing that you have to do is fill out all your financial information again. It's the same thing that you did on your pre-sentence report. You had to provide your financials. You do it again.
Right.
It's your income tax again for the last 3 years and what your current situation is. The financial litigation unit will then look at that and is supposed to make a recommendation then what your restitution should be set at. So, and within there too, Dan, we'll have to talk about, in the meantime, I transferred from South Carolina back to California.
And that you're in California now, right?
I'm now
okay.
in California.
Thought so, making sure.
I just recently, and so my restitution on $954,000 is $600 a month. Even though they're taking quite a big hefty thing, but I'm married, and in California it's a community property state, so they are allowed to look at the spouse's information.
So you're paying restitution for forever, basically, as of right now.
Forever.
It's just a $600 bill that you've attached yourself to. That is just, it is
Right.
what it is. It's something you have to pay. So now your husband stuck with you through this whole thing, obviously, because you just
Right.
mentioned your husband. How
Right.
hard was this process on your husband? And was there ever any concern? Not, I mean, look, I know he's not going to, but while you're in prison, did those because you'd hear horror stories from other women, did those thoughts run through your mind? Like, what is he doing? Why didn't he answer the phone?
Because he's military and was on several deployments, and so it was like a role reversal. I'm home and he's there, and
Right.
He's always been pretty stable about that. So I really never really worried about that. I think the biggest thing for him is with his financial and the restitution, that they're looking at everything that he feels like he's the criminal.
Right.
Because they're investigating.
Because he's being punished.
He's being punished, and it puts a big strain, because it's like, well, why are they looking at my stuff? Why is it that I feel like I'm having to pay for everything? And I understand that. And I think that's the hardest thing right now still for him to grasp.
We just got a question here from Tamara McCullough. Her son is one of our clients. She wants to know, Holly, did others get in trouble from your company?
Others did not. They did not. No matter how much that I pushed, and they did not. So
you were the one that took it all on the chin.
My boss got amnesia. There's a lot to this still that, they all kind of went poof and went on to other things. But
so no conspiracy. You were the only one. You wrapped up in this all by yourselves, just the wire fraud charge.
Right. Even though those charges may have those individuals' names and their families' name members, doesn't matter. So. And
we got a couple of late stragglers. We got the in-gamer. Guys, when this stream's over, you can replay it. They're asking, what did you do to get in trouble? I would just recommend just starting it from the beginning, because we kind of went through, hour and 45 minutes. We went through the whole start to finish, what she did, how she got in trouble. You can look her up, Holli Coulman, Google her name. It comes right up. She has a very unique last name.
Yeah, pages and pages, if you want to.
But Shannon Ford, she's joined us. Shannon, how you doing? I just saw you joining the room here. We got a lot of people joined in tonight. I really do appreciate all of you guys. Do any of you guys have any specific questions for what Holly's gone through, or what prison was like? Anything that you guys want to know, especially the ladies out there that might be potentially looking at some prison time? I know it's great to have insight from a woman, because there are clearly differences. Men and women are treated slightly different in prison. I would say men are treated a little bit more like the criminal aspect. Like Holly explained earlier on, when something happened over at the men's prison, they basically abandoned ship and left the women to fend for themselves, which would never happen at a men's camp. It's too much security risk. And it goes to point out if they can afford to just abandon the entire women's prison to go deal with the men, how important is it really to lock up all of these people to begin with if they don't need to be supervised at all, because the men can just jump ship? So I would really suggest you guys to ask some questions, because we have Holly here. Also, for those of you that are just joining, today's Thursday. We typically never do a live stream on Thursday. It's Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Yesterday, we tried to do this live stream, and I had computer problems beyond to the point where I ended up breaking a keyboard over it. So it was a very bad day for rdapdan. But every Wednesday, guys, our new time is going to be 5:30 on Wednesdays. And the topic every Wednesday is going to be solely about women. So we're calling Wednesday Ladies Night. We're going to be focused on women's topics, women's preparing for prison. I definitely want to try to have Holly on as much as she's willing to come on. And because she's actually been advocating and helping other women prepare for federal prison as well. Not as a business. It is something that she's considering thinking about down the road, but she has a passion realizing what she's gone through. So those of you that might be going to federal prison, if male or female, if you have questions and you think you could benefit from Holly and you're interested in getting some information from Holly, please, guys, you got my information on this screen. Reach out to me and we can definitely take advantage of Holly's experience and what it was like for her. Let's see if we got any questions here. What crime qualifies you for this prison? Are you talking about a camp, Big Boy? Big Boy's asking a question. He wants to know what qualifies you for this prison. be a little bit more clear on that, and I'll try to answer your question. We also got a question from Christina Smith. Beauty regimen. Are you talking about what her regimen was, getting up and getting ready every day? Did you get up and get ready every day? Was it like, hey, let's put makeup on like we're going out? I mean, was that something you guys did?
That is something that, I had asked the same question beforehand and wanted to find about, do ladies do this? And there is a hair